You're locked into Inception Radio Network, Superior, Wisconsin.
Welcome to the John Ford UFO Nightmare, a dedicated ufologist's journey through hell and our attempt to get him out.
Hello, Planet Earth. This is MJ, and welcome to the premiere of the John Ford UFO Nightmare. We've thrown together a little think tank here on Inception Radio to help free John Ford and, bring justice to this, this in-service that has happened to John. Tonight we have a great lineup of thinkers and researchers going over the John Ford case. We have Peter Moon, who has been involved with the John Ford case for quite a few years. We have Joseph Zupardo. He has power of attorney over John and has some key evidence to bring his innocence about. We have Ken Storch. He is a researcher and member of the Oklahoma UFO Paranormal Team. We also welcome Marilyn and Dick Carlson of the Oklahoma UFO Paranormal Team. Marilyn also has some key evidence through the Elaine Douglas files. Jerry Samisi is joining us. He did the initial reporting on the John Ford case and had some newspaper print about the article and the case itself. And last but not least, we have Rick Smith, who has started and been working on the John Ford initiative for quite a few years. Now I'm going to throw it over to Bob Tarmac. And Bob, if you want to introduce Jerry, here you are.
I'm a greenhorn to this. I came on board with this about two and a half months ago. Real fast, my interest in this. I knew about John Ford. It was in the back of my mind. And then one day, John Ford called the studio. And, Mike, you were able to record it, and we were able to put it on air. And it really hit my heart that this man was set up, railroaded, and put in a very dark place, not even in prison, in a criminal psychological institute. And I thought, my God, this is like Russia with a gulag, or the Soviet Union with the gulag. So, in any case, I'm interested in this from the aspect, the human aspect and the political aspect of this shouldn't happen in the United States.
Right.
In any case, since I am a greenhorn and I know so little about the case compared to other people here, I'm going to hand this over to Jerry Samisi, who is a reporter who covered the case at the very beginning when John was arrested. And I want Jerry will inform us about John Ford's involvement. I think he started the Long Island UFO Network. He was president of it. He was a UFO investigator and got involved with a UFO crash on Long Island. And everything involving that just went to hell, and they put him away for the rest of his life. Jerry, are you there?
I'm here. Well, let me, preceding John's arrest, let me, backtrack a little. My association contact with him is, I was in the 80s and 90s, up to 2001, I worked as a reporter and editor for a local paper in the Hamptons on the east end of Long Island. Now, this was a pretty well-known paper on the east end. It didn't have the status in the journalistic world as, say, Newsday or the Daily News or the New York Times, and that's probably why I got away with writing about, John and his, UFO group. I first heard about it. I first heard about him and met him way back in 1988. It's hard to believe it's really that long, over 25 years ago. I had heard of it. I had actually seen in another local paper that he had this group. It was kind of a terse article, and since I had always had an interest in UFOs, I got in touch with him. We met. He talked about the group. I went to one of his meetings. I wrote an article, and I think I've said this to many people, that I felt John was comfortable with me because I just reported on him and his group, whatever claims I made, in a very straightforward news manner. Particularly in those days, and certainly even today, although less so today, anything involving UFOs, there's always like a snicker in the background. The reporters, oh, this is crazy stuff, little green men and so forth. So I think John appreciated. I didn't say I agreed with him. I didn't say I disagreed with him. I wrote it straight, and I think he liked that. So I remember there was throughout the ensuing years, from '88 up to his arrest in '96, I had done a few articles on the group when there was a mysterious incident over the Merchants Bay off Long Island. I know he put up a UFO seminar in the spring of '89 that I attended. Then there was the whole Southaven Park incident in November of '92, and John had been voraciously and his associates investigating this. And I remember in April of '94, he took me on what was a full day. It was a very warm April day through Southaven Park, and a little north of it. I don't know if you want me to go into a lot of detail about it. I could do that later. I'm just kind of giving you an overview of it. And then he had a conference. He had a conference on the whole crash at a, I think it was like the Marriott or something on Long Island in the spring of '95. So he was, very actively pursuing mysterious happenings on Long Island related to UFOs. Then I remember not having. Then in May of '96. Now this was about the end of April, early May '96. So it's about 6 weeks before he was arrested. I hadn't spoken to him for a while, and I called him up just to see how he was doing, what was going on. And he sounded, quite frankly, I thought, well, this is very paranoid. He's telling me that Brookhaven town officials are trying to kill him, and I'm thinking, my first reaction was, wow, this guy this sounds a little off. And then he said what turned out to be, to me, a prophetic line. He said, if something happens to me, you'll know what I said is true. And that stuck in my head. Well, it still has stuck in my head. But so then, as I mentioned, as we were talking prior to going on air, it's June 12th, 1996. My wife and I are just sitting watching the news. And it was, I think it wasn't just the Long Island station. It was one of the main, news channels, ABC, NBC, whatever, CBS. And the reporter comes on. He said, I don't remember exactly, but to paraphrase it, a UFO investigator on Long Island has been arrested for conspiracy to murder. And I just, before they even said or showed anything, I just knew it was him. And then the next thing was a clip of John being let out of his house in Bellport in handcuffs. And then subsequently, I remember doing 2 articles for the paper on his whole arrest, the whole thing. I mean, there were many strange and absurd facets to it. In fact, one of the interesting things was Preston Nichols, who may be familiar to your audience, certainly Preston and Peter Moon have collaborated to write about the Montauk Project. Mm-hmm. Preston Nichols visits me that summer, and he's got a copy of the warrant that was left at John's house. This is the warrant to search his house. Now, John was arrested June 12th, 1996. The warrant was dated June 14th. And I later on, I made a copy of it. Later on, brought it up to John's lawyer, John Rouse, who later became highway superintendent in Brookhaven Town, and now is a Suffolk County judge. But I said, well, they supposedly searched his house, and this warrant is dated 2 days after the fact. That seems like a pretty big technicality to me. And he just said, well, what they'll just do is get the detective to appear before the judge and swear that this was just a typographical error, whoever typed up the warrant, and it's not going to help him. So, although I personally to this day think a lot could have been made about that. It seems like people who murder people get off on less technicalities than that. So John was then housed in the Riverhead Jail on Long Island for a while. I don't know, I think about a year and a half or so, then he was sent upstate.
Hey, Jerry.
Yeah.
What was the actual charge? What was he charged with?
That's a very good point. I'm trying to just give the very bare bones, but that is a very good point. It was conspiracy to murder. Now and the charge was that he was going to poison 3 Brookhaven town officials. There was John Powell, Anthony Gazzola, and Fred Towle. Now, Powell at the time was president of the Republican Party in Suffolk County. Suffolk County is one of the counties on Long Island in which John resided, which I reside. A very, very large county in terms of land area. Now, Fred Towle was a Suffolk County legislator, and Gazzola worked, I forget he had some position in Brookhaven Town. Brookhaven Town is a township that's within Suffolk County. And I should add that Brookhaven Township has the, shall we say, the not inaccurate label of being called Crookhaven, because there's been so much political skullduggery. And so he was supposedly planning to kill these 3 people, and the evidence they had against him was somebody who was talking to him was wired. Now, the transcript of this, and I should also roll back a little explanation about that. Allegedly, this police informant was brought into John's house by a guy named Joseph Mazzucchelli, who was one of the other people arrested with John. Mazzucchelli was basically like a low-level thug that John was helping out, and really Mazzucchelli fed John a lot of stuff that John should have been not so naive about believing. But apparently John had a big gun collection which was all legal. That was another thing they trumpeted when they arrested John. He had all these guns in the house, and they turned out to be all legal. It was, late, just like when you see a lot of things on the news, and then when it's clarified, you very rarely see the clarification, or it's buried in the back, whereas the more sensational stuff is presented up front. Now, apparently Mazzucchelli took one of John's guns and sold it to this guy, and this guy who was, in trouble with the police and trying to get in their graces by being an informant, said, I know I can get you some info about illegal gun sales in Suffolk County. And then he goes to John, and John is making, let's put it this way, if I was saying, I'm going to go punch the president in the nose, it just sounds like I'm pissed off at what the president is, it doesn't, I don't think most people would take it seriously. John said he was going to put something radioactive in Gazzola's lasagna. I mean, I'm serious. So but they took it. The authorities took this as that he was actually planning on doing this. Now, where the radium came from was another person who was arrested with John, and somebody there helped me out. I'm suddenly blanking out on his name. Somebody must know. Who was that?
Szabo.
Oh, Szabo, right? Yeah, Ed Szabo. Who? Here's the only illegality in the whole story. Szabo, from what I understand, was working with Grumman and took this very low-grade radioactive substance. Now, John said he was going to use this to calibrate his Geiger counters, because I know when he would go out on UFO investigations, he would test if there was any radioactivity in the area. Now, what's an interesting note to this is that, when I followed up on all these details, when the Brookhaven Lab, which is also in Brookhaven National Laboratory, which is a major research lab in America, is in Suffolk County also. They have a radiological response team Radiological Assessment something. It's called the RAP team. I forget the exact acronym or what the acronym stands for, but they were there to take the radium, but the police weren't just going to take the radium and bring it to the station house. Now, when I spoke, Brookhaven Lab, I had fairly good relationships with their PR person there because I had done a number of articles on research there. And she said, well, we're not really allowed to talk about the case, but I'll give you to a person who was on that team. And that person said to me, I said, well, how radioactive was this radioactive substance? He said, I'm not allowed to say, but I'll just say this. If, John was accused, was going to put it in somebody's toothpaste. He was going to put it on somebody's car seat. And he said, this stuff, it would take like 20 years to give somebody cancer. It was very low rate. I remember him saying that specifically. And I know Mona Rowe, who was the head of, the communications director, she said, the joke around the lab is that if you have prostate cancer, John Ford will cure you if he puts it on your car seat. In other words, with a low-level radiation treatment. So apparently the radiation wasn't too serious. And, so here's the thing. He's arrested with these two other guys, Szabo and Mazzucchelli. Szabo and Mazzucchelli are sentenced. I think Mazzucchelli got, now don't forget, it's allegedly conspiracy to murder. Nobody was murdered. No physical attempt was made. In other words, it was just, he said he was going to get these, he said, whether you want to take him seriously or joking around, he was going to do this or that. But there was he hadn't gotten acted upon. He hadn't done anything. So these other guys did very brief. I know Szabo did like 2 years and then got probation. I'm not positive. I'm talking about Mazzucchelli. I'm not positive if Szabo went in at all, but I know he got some type of sentence. And John Ford is still locked up. Here's the thing. The whole crux of this and its absurdity, it's like something a novel from Kafka. If John Ford had gone to trial and been convicted, he would have gotten a few years and then been out. Instead, his attorney, who I really feel very much misrepresented him, some people feel it was intentional, that he was part of this plot against John, some people feel he was just incompetent. Whatever the case, he advised John to take this to agree to insanity. Basically, it was an insanity. He wasn't competent. And John had told me that John Rouse, the attorney, assured him, you'll just do 2 years or so. Now, of course, he has done, 96 to 2000, he's done 19 years. Mm-hmm. And he's still, the end is not really in sight. So, that's basically the overview of it. John wrote me these long missives in 97 about his whole story. I know Peter Moon has put it up on his website. I've talked to John over the years. He's had hearings. He's always kind of thought, this is the year I'll get out. He has had no violent incidents in this prison. Excuse me?
He's a trustee there. He has absolutely no record. In fact, he's won awards at the Psychiatric Center.
For good behavior.
It's Mid Hudson Psychiatric, yeah.
Shirley, can I ask a question?
Can I say a little something?
Jerry, can I ask a...
Oh, if you're asking, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Jerry, let me ask a question. Has John Ford ever been arrested for violent behavior or had any history of violent behavior?
I have no knowledge that he has. And I've talked to a lot of people that knew him. And, here's, ironically, he worked as a court officer in Riverhead.
Exactly.
Riverhead is a county.
A trusted position. They won't let people who have a criminal record or have violent behavior be a court officer.
So that's true, and
so that
you can verify.
Do you have any?
Yeah, you can verify that with two of the closest people he worked with at that time as a court officer. One's his best friend, John Marafino, and the other's Joel Shapiro. and they had firsthand experience as to what went on there, because these two poor guys were still working as court officers at the time that their own friend, who was a court officer, is now being run through the system there, and they tried their best to make sure he was taken care of while he was sitting in the cell there. They would bring him lunch or food and try and sneak things to him when they could. And they saw firsthand his original attorney, Rouse, I think it's Joel Shapiro and John Marafino backed this up as well. They witnessed firsthand John Powell going after his attorney outside the courtroom and threatening him in a very menacing manner that suggested, you either bury this guy or your career is basically shit in Suffolk County.
Now, Marilyn Carlson, you had a question for Jerry?
Well, no, I was going to say that I have a copy of John's original examination report that was done June 16th, 1997. And the diagnosis was major depression, single episode with psychosis. A single episode. And he remains in this mental health prison today. The prognosis was good with treatment. And it said the patient is psychotic. I don't think he was psychotic at all. And how they got a mental health doctor to write up something that indicated that John was mentally ill is beyond me, other than the fact that John agreed to a plea deal that he would agree to a mentally ill to reduce the charges instead of going forward, because he was told he would lose all of his benefits in retirement if he was.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, yeah. If he were charged with a felony, and so out of fear, and John Rouse put him up to that actually, and presented that to him, and in some way encouraged him to do it. I asked the question today: is that law that he would lose all of those benefits if he were convicted of a felony? Would all those rights go away? Would he not have rights to his retirement benefits and so forth? And he says, yes, it still exists. So it's not something that he could fight in court now. It's interesting. John has a new attorney. If those of you who are online don't know that, we had hoped that we would get his attorney on this evening, but maybe on another show we can also talk with him.
Yes, I spoke with his attorney a couple times over the last week, and he seems to be very busy. We didn't have time to talk at length, so yes, there is a possibility we can have Mr. Reno on subsequent shows.
I got to make a suggestion here, and that suggestion is that we have to put this attorney on. We're getting a little bit of feedback here. I can hear feedback from the production.
Yeah, if everybody can stay a little still there we go. Thanks. Yeah.
Or stay muted while you're not talking. Yeah. I don't know if that's the problem, though. But in any case, this attorney has to be put on a watch list. Even the mere mention that he's too busy. This is one of the problems, that no one has taken responsibility for this case, and it's been and the first earlier attorney was guilty of not being vigilant, and when you have to be extremely vigilant on this case, for the very reason I was going to bring up, that this case goes to the highest levels of governmental authority, and we can only evaluate this by reason of the fact of John Ford's alleged target was John Powell, who's now deceased, but was, as Jerry alluded to earlier, was in charge of the Republican Party. He was so powerful that he bragged that he got the then Governor George Pataki, elected. And when John Ford was arrested, Governor Pataki was the first to console John Powell about this horrible thing that had been allegedly done to him. So, yes.
I got a question. What was the motive? I mean, why was John Ford supposedly going after the DA, this Powell character?
Powell was not the DA.
Here's the good. Before there's an answer, if there is an answer to that, there's a very pertinent point that we should be at, is that John Ford's alleged 3 victims, Gazzola, Powell, and Tal, 2 out of those 3, Powell and Tal, not trying to make a rhyme here, but they were subsequently indicted and convicted for corruption and served time in jail. And I thought, that's very ironic. They were, which illustrates, again, there was definitely has been a lot of corruption in the Brookhaven, Suffolk County area.
Were they afraid that Ford was going to expose that?
Yes.
Well,
yes, they were.
I often thought,
yes.
Okay, I'm just.
I will tell you why it's a yes, because the search warrant was looking for rap sheets. Why would you care about a rap sheet in a search warrant?
You wouldn't. Unless they thought maybe since he was an officer of the court and he had court records or something, But I'll tell you what, the more I get into this case, gentlemen and ladies, the more I see constitutional issues here. Okay, this is incredible that he was being railroaded.
In terms of here's the thing to consider too in the bigger picture. This is the first time in history that you have 2 major issues rubbing up against each other that had never ever happened before in environmental issues or the UFO community. This is the first time you have a serious environmental violation that, the EPA should have known about, rubbing up against UFO research with a crashed UFO.
You're alluding to illegal dumping. You're alluding to the illegal dumping, which I don't think has been mentioned yet, that John Powell was convicted of taking bribes for illegal dumping in the Brookhaven town dump.
But here's the other thing, too, is that...
and you've got a UFO investigator out there with a Geiger counter looking for a crashed UFO.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so where the UFO comes down, all of a sudden they were terrified that in the research that was trying to be done on the crashed UFO site, this just happens to be the same area where all of a sudden you could easily find toxic dumping. And that explains why a special elite group of firefighters had to be called in to clean out what was ever there, be it dead alien bodies, UFO wreckage, or toxic dumping, or a combination therein. This is like one of those rare scenarios where even the firefighters are like, what the hell do we do with this?
Right. Hazmat team fighting a fire.
Right.
What was the original or what was ever the determination for the fire to begin with? Was that ever established?
No.
Now, wait, are you talking about the fire in Southaven Park or the Sunrise fires of '95?
The one that
he doesn't know about each different incident. There's 2 incidents here. Hey, Jerry, go ahead and explain the 2 incidents.
Well, okay, there's a Southaven Park incident where allegedly in November of '92. A number of fire departments were called to put out this fire of, what John and his group claimed were a crashed UFO. Now, let me get that. When I said that day in April of '94, when John showed me around this Southaven area and a little north of it, what was very interesting was that there were these pits in the woods. First of all, it had been apparent that huge trucks had come in. You saw evidence of tire tracks and broken, brush, and then there were these pits in the woods that you could see along the sides of the pits. Roots of trees that were sticking into the pit were burned. It was like something was there. Something created a pit by burning the side. And John alleges that this UFO broke up and came in these pits. Now, what was very interesting was that I was standing by one of these pits, and John said it must have come through there. He points, and at a diagonal, like as if something had come down on a diagonal. You look diagonally up from this pit, and there are these power lines that are spliced. And John said, "Oh, they probably broke those lines and they spliced them." And of course, it doesn't prove it, but that was interesting. I said there was evidence of burying in the pits. So that was okay. So again, that was from November '92.
And a mysterious video arose after that, if you recall, Jerry. I don't know if you saw the video of the crash.
I did, I remember.
And Joe Zabardo, you could maybe enlighten us on that video.
Right. I think I know which one you're talking about.
That was given to me in confidence by someone, and I'd also like to see. I was an investigator with Long Island UFO Network for quite a long time, and I also worked for Grumman for a short period of time as a contract employee. And at that time, they were finishing up with the upgrades to the F-14, and they had Plant 125 out in Calverton, where they would fly these out over the ocean and across Long Island, across the Sound, over the submarine base across the way where General Electric motor.
It's New London.
Right,
New London, Connecticut.
New London, and they would test TARPS pods. These would it's called a Tactical Air Reconnaissance pod. Okay, and they were affixed to the wings. Now, if you affix something to the wings of a swept-wing fighter bomber, okay, it was either extra fuel, a camera, munitions, a special radar like a synthetic aperture radar, or something else. And these things would constantly, because of the G-forces, they would constantly snap off and fall off. Occasionally, one would fall out and drop off. They tried to fly over, over areas that were unpopulated. Occasionally, one of these things would drop off. They'd send a team out to get it. Wouldn't tell anyone what it was, and they very often. I mean, they're unidentified, but they're not from another planet. Okay, maybe one started a fire. On another occasion, maybe one just went down, and a lot of people saw it, and maybe it tagged the power line and cut power for a little while in that area, and they blocked off some streets, loaded it up onto a flatbed truck. John was always asking me to check things out for him, interview witnesses, either on videotape, audio tape, or a combination of video, audio, and then check their backgrounds. And many people saw very much the same thing. And I kept telling them it could be this, it could be that. Don't go attributing it to aliens unless you're absolutely 100% sure. But I'll be happy to have any material analyzed for you, anything that's found out there. I'll help you out as far as Geiger counters go. He went to I think very shortly before he was arrested, he went to a swap meet, and a number of people were with him, and he bought either 2 or 3 Geiger counters, which he came into my house with, sat down with some of his friends, and they didn't have a test strip on the side. So I was the one that advised John to get a hold of something radioactive, either a piece of americinium from the which they use in all smoke detectors have that in that, and just to qualitatively test the dosimeter on the on each of the Geiger counters, so that you'll know when it's reading above background, it is in fact if you're dragging the dosimeter along the ground and all of a sudden you see a spike, you'll know that something radioactive is there, you know, and you take a sample of that dirt and put it away. But basically, the only thing John had in his possession, okay, after that time, was one container about 5 inches across, about 8 inches tall, a lead container with a small bottle, and inside the bottle was something halfway between the size of a nickel and a quarter, and it was pressed down, compressed radium ore. Okay, it wasn't a purified radium. It wasn't remnants of radium paint, which they used on watch dials. You know, I mean, tens of thousands of people, you know, used to lick the brushes when they used to manually paint the numbers on watches, you know, so that they would glow in the dark. This stuff wouldn't even glow in the dark. Okay.
Wow.
And yeah, and I told him get a hold of just get some heavy grit sandpaper, a piece of duct tape, and put a little bit on a piece of duct tape, slap it to the side of the Geiger counter. You know, don't, you know, make sure you clean up and everything, and you know, wipe everything down when you're done. Do it, you know, do it on some paper towels or something, and wear gloves when you do it, because you know, and then just test it. You know, put it at the lowest setting, and if it goes up about halfway, 3/4 of the way on the lowest setting, then you'll at least know that you're, you know, if you're picking up something above background. Now, that's what he intended to do with the radium. Okay, it was radium ore. It was. I want to make it very clear that it was radium ore, and that Ed Szabo, I believe Ed Szabo gave it to him, and he had more in his garage. But the thing saying that they found 5 25-pound containers, it was 25 pounds of lead and about, you know, a gram and a half of radium ore. And right, and the rest of the stuff, Szabo was arrested like 3 or 4 days later. Okay. With all sorts of stuff from Grumman in his garage, including radioactive materials. And also, they may have had a search warrant to search his house, but all this stuff, not all this stuff, I mean, the container, okay, and a pair of gloves and a mask were in the back of his truck, which was in the front of the house, parked in front of his house, okay, and the truck wasn't locked. So they could have came down there, put anything in there, and said they found it. Okay, that was the first thing.
Tainted evidence.
Yeah. The second thing is, if you take a look at the some of the press coverage, which I sent 3 of you the original.
Which I did, and I want to interject it in here, Joe, that I watched some of that the press coverage. It was like, oh my God, he's a radioactive terrorist, and he wants. I mean, they blew it up. They really blew it up to make John look like this is a huge terrorist conspiracy.
You know, Bob. At the time, I remember it was. You know, you can point a finger directly at News 12 Long Island. They were the main culprits who went to bed with this. All right.
Yes.
And what you might find this funny, but my mother and I were watching this, right? First words before I even got to say anything, the first words out of my mother's mouth was, "Well, that's bullshit. What the hell is this?" So even my mother knew what the hell was going on, and it was like at that point, that was like right at that point, like greased lightning. I was on the phone with Peter. First words out of my mouth, "Peter, what the hell happened? What's going on?" So, and because none of it made any sense.
Let me put some context here. Let me put some. This is Peter. Let me put some context here, because of course, the UFO factor, as Joe was alluding to, it may not have been a UFO. It may have been, but certainly the degree of security around that Southaven Park crash was inordinate if it was just a military plane, with the way the fire people and stuff acted after that. But more to the point of this, and how Joseph Mazzucchelli enters the scene, who is the informant. He's a paid police informant. He's registered in Suffolk County as a paid police informant. And for the audience, Joseph Mazzucchelli is the one who orchestrates the conversation with John Ford to get him to say that they were going to put radium in the lasagna or whatever it was they said.
That's
and
called entrapment.
He was entrapping and aiding and abetting, and he was a paid police informant.
And
Wait. May I speak on that? Because I've known Joe Mazzucchelli since about 1970. Okay? We were in junior high school together. All right? Now, he may have done a lot of things, but he was arrested with John.
Of course he was.
He was offered, they would have let him walk if he agreed to testify against John, and he declined, and he got convicted to 12 years of conspiracy to commit murder, and he served 6 of those 12 years in a state prison upstate.
I don't think he stood 6 years. Was he in for 6 years? Are you sure of that?
He was in prison for 6 years on top of the 2 years in between.
It's also been reported that he's received a hefty payout for that as well.
No, well, I think. Wait, I'd like to ask a question to Joe. Do you feel, from what John has related to me and has written about his association with Mazzucchelli, you feel Mazzucchelli was an upstanding guy?
I don't think he was an upstanding guy, but I don't think he's the kind of guy that would set someone up for the police, okay, in that manner, and then spend 6 years in jail and come out basically broke. I mean, I saw the car he was driving. It was a 28-year-old piece of junk Plymouth that barely ran, okay? This guy never used drugs, never drank. He was kind of a show-off, a braggart, a loudmouth. He had been in trouble.
So do you think when he was claiming to John that he was with the Mossad, and the Mossad was?
I think he was lying to John. If he was claiming that, I think he was lying.
Well, he also convinced John to say these statements. He insisted that he say these statements. So why did he insist?
I think he was trying to generate money. I think he was trying to get money. All right. I think the police informants. John, if you listen to the cell phone calls which I intercepted, by the way, they are different than the calls that they presented to the jury, and that they used to get the warrant, and that they used to get the entrance to his house.
Can you go into that a little? How were they different? What was the?
Okay. At one point, he goes. At one point, they asked him about his friend Sal, and who was an alcoholic and constantly had to have a beer in his hand. Constantly, he was drunk all the time, and he was going to go into rehab, and then and that was the second conversation. That was at which 2000 hours is that? 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock? I don't know.
2000 hours would be 12. It would be 9 o'clock.
2000. That would be not. Yeah, it was at 9 o'clock on that night. Okay, he was on the phone with these guys. Now I don't know if they were coming over that night, and when you saw him being taken out in handcuffs, it was in the morning, because the report broke into News 12 at about midnight, and John could not be contacted. And the phone calls were on. I gave you the date on there. I think it was the same date that he was arrested, or the day after. I don't know if it was at the 12th, 13th, 14th, whatever it was. But there were 2 calls made regarding the gun, that he was going to give this gun that he took from John. John found out about it, and he was going to give, he said, quote unquote, the asshole John, give the gun back to him, okay, and that they would make money on the radioactive material, which Joe claimed, was very hot. Now, he had no idea, what hot means, even, as far as that stuff is concerned. I mean, if John had a little chunk of it and it didn't even glow, okay, and it barely took, I mean, these Geiger counters, they were calibrated a long time ago, but I mean, if you put it on the first setting, it would barely go to the halfway mark. We're talking about something that I would feel very comfortable ingesting, okay, and not even ever giving it a second thought, okay. I personally would ingest it. I would pop it in. If it would get
There's no reason to jest about any of this. There's no reason for him to suggest jesting, and he was getting him to say a line. It's very clear that Mazzucchelli enabled the arrest to take place. To what degree he was a puppet of the police, but we know that he was assigned police informant, and that he did enable this arrest by insisting John repeat a particular line. And that's all that's really important with Mazzucchelli, with reference to what I was going to say initially, to put this into context, because Mazzucchelli is a character, a bit character, but he's a very important bit character. But anyway, what I was going to say is all of this sort of, Mazzucchelli does not enter the scene until after, in October of 1995, when John receives a call from Gary and Dorothy Tritt of Ronkonkoma, who are members of his Long Island UFO network. They're professional hypnotherapists, and they had a receptionist named Patty McDonald who had a friend claiming there was a UFO crash responsible for those fires. Now, this is the fires in 1995 that made national news.
Right.
Patty found out about this after totaling her car crash when she was rear-ended by a delivery truck. Stephen Ferrar was a used car dealer, and he gives her a card that if she should ever need a new car. So later she visits this guy, Ferrar, with her boyfriend, and they end up having a long discussion about how Ferrar was dirt biking in the woods near Suffolk County Community College, which is right outside of Riverhead, and they heard a crash in the woods. Investigating, he takes the dirt bike. He sees a circular-shaped object about the size of a house impacted into the ground. This is his report. It looks like a flying saucer. It radiates tremendous heat, and small fires are breaking out nearby. He notifies his brother-in-law, an FBI agent, who calls FBI headquarters in Hauppauge, whereupon they come to the crash site where military helicopters were already on the scene. And the Tritts, then, because they were members of LUFON, Long Island UFO Network, covertly arranged for John Ford to run into this Patty McDonald girl, whereupon he clandestinely tape records her, which is legal in New York State, and he gets her account of the offense. And this information would have been seized, by the way, in the raid. And anyway, Patty then suffers a series of suspicious car accidents and then disappears permanently on the scene. Ferrar would later deny the entire incident, but would acknowledge having a brother-in-law in the FBI. How would they know this otherwise? So John Ford and LUFON are now beginning to suffer suspicious break-ins, car mishaps, and surveillance. So this is it's only after this point that Joseph Mazzucchelli enters the scene and wants to be part of LUFON, and then begins to.
I introduced Joe to John because Joe was having trouble getting work. He couldn't get work, and he was doing odd jobs, in between. And I suggested to John, I told him Joe's background. I asked him to do a criminal background check on him, and you find out the details of everything. He had been in jail twice before, okay? It was like one was a breaking and entering, and one was possession of stolen property, where he loaned his car out to some kids in the neighborhood, and they were going to go bar hopping, and he doesn't drink, so he gave them the car, and they walked into a bar. They went in, they opened the door of the bar. The guy didn't lock up, so they took some bottles of liquor and a stoplight. You know, they had like a traffic light and some other odds and ends, and they loaded it up, put it in the back seat, and then on the way back,
we're getting off topic.
Yeah, I want to interject something here.
It was Joe's car. It was Joe's. I mean, it was Joe's car. So when he went to get it the next day, that he was surrounded by police, and he pled guilty and spent like 6 months in jail.
Ken Storich, go ahead and ask a question.
I having worked with UCs, undercover agents, informants, whatever. I worked vice and narcotics for about 5.5, 6 years, and had a number of informants that you're describing Mazzucchelli, at least their personality, their background, their criminal history, to a T.
Right.
And so here, I'm coming at this strictly. He probably told somebody within, and I'm going to say right now, the pivot man on this whole thing, so far as I see it, is Powell. The DA.
Well, yes.
Okay, there's somebody. I think it was Peter. You said Mazzucchelli. He's a player. But he's just a bit player.
Yes.
And which is true.
Yep.
Okay,
yes,
what I'm saying is that that's a classic undercover informant type of scenario that would go down in terms of getting to John Ford. He would lead him into the area that somebody wanted him to go, and that somebody, from what I can pull, is Powell. Okay, somehow he got wind of the police had an informant into John Ford. Now, whether he sent him in there or it was just happenstance, I don't know. But
I'm wondering, MJ, if we could play our little interview that you and I did with John Ford this afternoon, and it'll really kind of give John Ford's opinion about Mazzucchelli and where their relationship, and he still believes that their relationship is today. So
please do so.
Yeah, guys. If you guys want to stand by, I'm going to load that right now. And here we go. This interview was from earlier today with Marilyn Carlson and John Ford. So
everybody mute.
Yeah, everybody mute or be quiet. It may be hard for you to hear, but I will work on the audio. So here we go, everybody.
Now, Marilyn, you had asked me before what were the circumstances leading up to my arrest.
Well, we're getting bad audio here. Well, I'm going to have to work on this during the show, guys. Okay. Yeah, it's a little tough for everybody here.
Interrupt us when you get it.
Okay.
Yeah,
I will.
But hey, from getting back on Mazzucchelli, so far, what I've heard, Ford was entrapped. That was entrapment. If Mazzucchelli led the conversation and led it to the topic of where he's going to put, uranium in a toothpaste or Wheaties or on a car seat or whatever, and if Mazzucchelli is leading him in that direction, that's entrapment, man. That's incredible.
Right. No, but Mazzucchelli said, they asked him, what was that John was saying the other night? If you listen to the tape, what was that John was saying all night that he wants Powell? Who's Powell? He's one of the head politicians. What do politicians do? Nothing. They do nothing. And he goes, well then why did John want him whacked? He says, no, that's all bullshit. Almost at the end of the call, at the end of the second call. No, that's all.
I like to just interject two things. One concerning Mazzucchelli. Really should go into Mazzucchelli. In one way, he's a bit player, but he, according to what John wrote to me, which was very extensive, Mazzucchelli basically for months before this happened, for a long time before this happened, was feeding John all this stuff about the people who were combating the UFO conspiracy, the Mossad, and et cetera. And John seemed to be going at hook, line, and sinker. That illustrates why was Mazzucchelli. He could have led John on in a less fantastical manner, and why was John believing very fantastical things? And secondly, to go back to what Peter was saying about that report about the crashed UFOs, and he's referring that would be south of the Riverhead Community College, at Southern County Community College in Riverhead, in August '95. That's what's called the Sunrise Fires, because what happened is, a little further south is Sunrise Highway, and it caused a fire. Whatever caused that fire, whether it was a UFO or something else, that literally shut down.
When it tried to attempted to lift off and exploded.
I'm sorry. Say it again.
Is that the was in that video? Did the thing try to take off and explode with a brilliant flash?
Well, this I haven't seen. This was, and again, this was the.
Has anybody seen that video?
I haven't seen it. I'm referring to the incident from August 1995. It was the very last week of August.
That's it. That's the one.
Now I haven't seen that video, and I said that shut down that whole
on
area.
TV too. It was analyzed on TV, and someone who is very, very adept had no idea what kind of explosion that was, and couldn't identify the elements in it or anything like that.
That would explain why the fire had a unique personality and jumped from one side of Sunrise Highway to the other.
Right.
And Sunrise Highway is at least, 6 lanes, 4 lanes, okay?
Well, it's 2 lanes on either side with a long divider in the middle.
Yeah.
It's extremely wide.
So, I mean,
so you have
it wasn't
rarefied gas, you have hot rarefied air, okay, which gives you a vacuum, and then you maybe have some kind of charged plasma, which carries enough current to the other side of the road where it starts another fire.
Yeah, and the firefighters were terrified of this. Suffolk County, Nassau County, Queens, New York City, Yonkers, upstate New York, as far as Albany, and New Jersey and Staten Island. Every last fire alarm went off in the tri-state area, Connecticut included. They had 15, 20 different fire companies there because this is how terrified they were of this fire getting out of control that they couldn't control because they didn't know how to.
Holy cow.
As anybody we were talking to has been on the scene of that fire, I'm just curious if anybody else here had an impression of that. I was at that. Wait, let me go back. It started on a Thursday because my wife and I saw the flames miles away. Now, Long Island at that point it splits into 2 forks.
Jerry, this is MJ. We're going to take our one and only break, and we will get back to the fire. Will that work for you?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, we'll be right back with the John Ford UFO Nightmare. Hang in there, everybody.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free.
Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Hello, everyone. Lorian Fenton here, host of the California MUFON radio show, asking if you'd like special access to exclusive and amazing information about UFOs, the paranormal, and all things unexplained. If you're nodding yes, then join IRN's Insider Club. As an Insider Club member, you'll get an all-access pass to premier Inception Radio Network content for only $4.99 a month. month. This includes live UFO and paranormal conferences, live streaming UFO skywatches, exclusive IRN radio and TV productions, and of course, paying radio with MJ and Ken Storch. So don't wait any longer. Visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com and click on Member Login to join IRN's Insider Club and get your VIP access today.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. Did you miss a show? Well, guess what? You can check us out on YouTube. Go to YouTube and search Inception Radio Network to listen to the latest archives of all the shows on IRN. Another way to listen to us anywhere, anytime. For IRN, this is MJ. And oh yeah, right. Remember to subscribe too. Hit the subscribe button. Hello, IRN listeners. This is MJ saying hello and sharing an awesome secret I discovered. It's called DreamNuage.com. Fresh, raw, organic ingredients are used to create all their products. They are made in very small batches to ensure quality and freshness. Handmade in the USA, each product is created with care and with the finest organic ingredients. There are no preservatives, dyes, or chemicals in any product. Stop by Dream Nuage and relax. That's DreamNuage.com. Simple, raw, organic. Welcome back to the John Ford UFO Nightmare. We left off with Jerry Samisi talking about the fire. So, Jerry, go into the fires again.
Okay, again, this was the last week of August 1995, and as I was saying, the east end of Long Island at that point splits into two forks, North and South Fork. The fire was on the South Fork in the West Hampton area, which is the more western part of the South Fork. And at that time, that year, my wife and we were living on the North Fork. We were at the beach on the North Fork, and we could see the smoke coming from across Peconic Bay. So I said, well, that must be some big fire. It looks like around West Hampton. And I was accurate in that. And then the next, we saw on the news that night about the fire. The next day, when I went to work, they had cut off so many for days that area around Sunrise was impassable, and I was assigned to go cover. It was a Friday. I remember it was a Friday. I spent the whole day driving around that fire. I even got. It was a small airport. I can't remember which one it was. I got a guy to take me up in a plane over the fire. Got some photos, and we were only over the fire a very brief time because, they radioed the plane. You're not allowed to fly over this. Etc. It's dangerous. He came down pretty fast. I was also at the press conference that Pataki was there, Senator D'Amato, and who was the county executive at the time was Gaffney. Again, at the college they gave a big press conference, but from wherever within miles of this, you could be 10 miles away. You saw that fire was a huge fire. And the postscript to that is, I remember reading, we're going to investigate what caused this fire. Was it like, a Smokey the Bear incident, somebody left the campfire burning, or just what was going on? And I never heard, although I have inquired. In fact, when I remember I interviewed Gaffney about a year later, I think when he was running again for, county executive. Nobody. I don't know if there actually was an investigation, but it was never determined, at least officially, what caused that fire. So, I just wanted to add a little perspective on that.
From John Ford's perspective, he always felt that huge fire that took place that year in '95 was done for the sole purpose as a smokescreen so that they could get in there and basically dig out and get rid of the illegal toxic dumping.
Bingo.
It was a giant smoke screen.
You have to understand something. This is
He
very
walked right
important.
into it.
Okay, John got calls from all kinds of people at all hours of the day and night, and never refused an investigation. All right, I think the politicians wanted to get rid of him, wanted to either discredit him completely or put him in jail for something, because they didn't know what he found. He might have found something that was illegally done, and he's taking that, and of course, he's going to go to federal authorities with it or whatever. Okay, and somebody's going to end up in jail, just like Powell did, just like the other guy did. Everybody except Catterson, who was the district attorney. But all three people were they died as felons. They died felons. All of them. Okay, all three of them. Powell, and what's the other guy's name?
Gazzola was the other
Gazzola,
one.
yes.
He was never arrested for anything.
I think it was for bribes or something like that. Or no, I think he wasn't arrested. He was given a choice to leave his position, and
that's what I've heard, but I've never been able to verify that.
Yeah, and the thing look at how they died too.
What was Powell's position in Suffolk County? What you said, politician, but what exactly?
He was the head of the Republican Party.
He was also the Suffolk County executive. In other words, the CEO of Suffolk County.
Hello.
Yes.
No, wait. No. Powell was never the Suffolk County executive.
Yes, he was.
No, not Pat. No.
He was an elected executive. Okay, they have elected executive representatives from different districts meet. Okay, and they're all called executives. Okay, from my district, they have a guy that meets out in Riverhead or Hauppauge, and they go back and forth.
Well, maybe you're referring to the Suffolk. Maybe you might be referring to the Suffolk County legislature.
Yes.
They
call them executive. Yes, they call them executive. They don't call them legislators. They call them.
No, wait a minute. I mean, I've lived in Suffolk County since for decades. I've never heard the term. I've covered things. I've been at the Suffolk County legislature. I've never heard. The only person who's called is the Suffolk County. The Suffolk County executive, like now, is Steve Malone. That was Gaffney back in the 90s. Powell was the 90s. Powell was the head. Powell rose up from the. He was in charge of the Brookhaven Town dump, which is interesting because we're talking about dumping things.
Yeah, no kidding. The connection.
He rose up. He rose up through the ranks in Crookhaven, and he became the Republican, the chairman of the whole county Republican Party. Mm-hmm. So he did.
That's a very powerful
he had a lot
position.
of influence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He was the most powerful Republican in the state. He would brag. He would brag that, and that he was the one who got Governor Pataki elected. He was that powerful, and he was also. He was a criminal, and he would threaten. He threatened people to get his badge. That he would get their badge if they were an official. So he was very brazen. His nickname was Muggsy, and
did he have mafia connections?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Well, if he was in the dumping business, I'm sure he did, because they got a stranglehold on the garbage industry.
I told you what he was convicted of, getting trucks from New Jersey that were used, having them shipped out here, changing the tag numbers along with the dealership out here. They changed the tag numbers and billed Suffolk County for new trucks. Okay, and he pocketed the money along with his brother-in-law and a few other people. And a friend of mine knew about it. Okay. And in fact, he called me up the day before Powell died of a heart attack and said, somebody that you know is going to have a heart attack, and he's going to wake up dead tomorrow morning, and you should watch.
Wait a minute. Who was it who told you that?
I'm just going to give his first name is Marvin. Okay, I'm not even sure if that's his real name.
What was his? Did he have a close relationship with Powell? I mean, how did he know all this?
No. He had a close relationship with people that you really don't want to have close relationships with. Okay. In fact, another fellow that I know and myself, we were going to write a script for a movie regarding the Fulton Fish Market in the late 70s and early 80s when certain family businesses came in there and wanted money, or you would not be able to sell your catch at the Fulton Fish Market. And a friend of mine goofed it up by sending 12 pages of it over to someone who was very close to one of the Baldwins, and they finished the script, and I was supposed to get $200,000 for that, so I was pretty angry at the guy. But I hadn't spoken with him in like 2 years, and all of a sudden there's a message saying that while telling me to watch the news, and lo and behold, Powell's dead. And this is after he's out of jail. He goes into jail. He gets out, on probation, and somebody, I'm not going to say who, but somebody found out by listening to telephone conversations, I wonder who that could be, found out that he was calling around looking for drugs, and somebody that he knew in his family had a prescription for morphine, tablets. And he went over there, picked some up, and so somebody called his parole officer and said, would you be interested in this? And the parole officer replied, sure, I would, definitely. You want to leave your name? No, thank you. Boom, he gets arrested again, and the next day it's in the paper that he's back in jail for the rest of his sentence. Okay? Whereas you take now you take that in contrast to Joe Mazzucchelli, whatever he did or didn't do, okay, they flat out told him that if he testified against John and signed a paper, all he had to do was sign a paper. They typed out for him, okay. If he just signed that, he could leave. Okay, he could walk out. Okay, they would take his handcuffs off, and he could go home, and that would be it.
You tell me they told him that at that point when they were arresting him?
No. This is while they had him they took him straight to Riverhead Jail to await arraignment, and while he was in jail, one of the county attorneys brought him into a room. He had an attorney, and he said, I'll deny it if you say anything, but all you have to do is sign this paper, all right, and agree to testify against John should he plead not guilty.
Now, did you get this info straight from Mazzucchelli?
Yeah, I got this from 3 separate sources. Okay, 3 separate sources told me this. All right?
What kind of sources were they other than Joseph?
One was an attorney, one was someone who worked in the court system, and one was Mazzucchelli. Okay, and he said, I'm not guilty of conspiracy. Who did I conspire against? All right, and then ultimately he pled guilty because John was found non compos mentis, and he ended up in jail. They gave him a 12-year sentence, as opposed to walking before the grand jury.
I'm very suspicious of that because even Joseph Mazzucchelli would not be a convincing witness, and he could be so easily
discredited. I
discredited.
Agree with you.
It's not
there.
Yeah,
he was there at the time of the arrest. It was the people he knew that he invited into the house. They were the undercover officers.
Okay,
right?
You guys, listen here.
Know.
There's somebody you're forgetting though. Who was the? We haven't mentioned his name yet, and I would love to find this guy and basically, take him into a back alley. The one guy we're not mentioning. Who was the actual police informant acting like Joe Mazzucchelli's friend that he brought with him that night?
His name was Kevin. It was Koch or Koch?
Kevin Koch.
Kevin Koch. Yeah, of course, another Koch brother. And that name. Yeah, this guy. This guy was an actual police informant. This was the ringer who was cajoling the whole damn conversation in the living room right now, taking advantage of the fact that one of John Ford's favorite shows, and mine too at the time, was The X-Files. So, any number of episodes on The X-Files was about someone getting nailed with radiation. So, this is how this guy, Kevin Koch, manipulated the conversation on purpose as an actual police informant and got them joking about this.
Right. That's all they were doing was joking, and you can hear that entire thing. But they didn't play the entire thing for the grand jury. They had a transcript of it. They cleaned it up a little. They made a transcript of parts of it, and they said that it was only 27 minutes long. And it's really, 57 minutes, I think. It was 57 minutes long. At the point where
so they don't match.
You
can hear the siren going off at the end, where the guy is messing around with his gun cabinet, one of his gun cabinets, and he's got them wired. So if somebody opens it sets off an alarm. So John went into the other room. The guy got up, walked over to the gun cabinet. He went to open it, and it started whistling. The
point is, none of this would have ever been even. For these milquetoasts out there who think even joking about that is not so good, I think it's hysterical. But, the point is none of this ever would have been said had it not been an actual Suffolk County police informant that was rigging the conversation.
Exactly.
That's the point.
I totally agree with you.
Exactly.
Or somebody who was working undercover.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good point. That's an excellent.
Rick,
Yeah.
Rick, during the break, you brought up a very good point about talking about the actual UFO or the incident, and the people who actually witnessed this. And something that I want to stay on the spot and keep that UFO in there. I think that's a huge element to this larger mystery.
Which brings me to there was a video that was anonymously sent to John Ford. That was a video of where the crash site was and the burning, where it had been burned. And in this video, somebody took a snapshot from the video. And I found it in Elaine Douglas's files, and I said, "What the heck is this?"
Excellent.
Is that the one with the Mylar blanket?
It's what?
Is that the one with the Mylar blanket? It looks like a Mylar blanket, and they're covering something with it.
Right.
This is from the Southaven Park crash.
He said it was an alien.
Yeah, this is Southaven. Excuse me.
I looked it over. I couldn't see anything but human in there. But I don't know what he was covering up.
This is the Southaven Park crash. This is earlier. This is 1992, not the 1995 fires. It's different.
Right, exactly.
Okay, yeah. But I have both of them. I was involved.
That was the key factor that started this whole thing in motion, though. Okay, and so that was the linchpin right there. And it's easy to target one person and say, what the hell does John know? He's nuts. He just thinks he saw a UFO. He's chasing after fairy dust. But it's a hell of a lot harder to tell everybody coming home in rush hour traffic after work on Sunrise Highway that they're all wrong. Okay? And this is where all the eyewitness accounts came from. They were coming home, Sunrise Highway. They all, and pretty much to the letter, every eyewitness account is the same. They saw a cigar-shaped craft, okay, that had a bit of a glow around it, and it seemed to be wobbling, trying to stay stationary in the sky as if it may have lost control of itself, like something was wrong with it. And then the thing started in the wobble became more extreme, and it began to spin out of control across Sunrise Highway from across the road, landed, and everybody saw where it had gone down over the horizon at that point, down the tree line. And the direction it went down matched up with, what's referred to as the Southaven UFO Park crash. And this is what kicks everything off in Suffolk County and escalates into, eventually, the arrest in 96. So these accounts, these are people who, what are they going to lie about? They want to come home from work, have dinner, watch TV, go to bed.
I'm not saying they're lying. All I'm saying is that it's not necessarily extraterrestrial. Maybe it was something that needed to be covered up. Maybe some people in Suffolk County at the higher levels were told about it and then told to shut up.
Well, this is all quite possible, but let me point out an important thing here. This is sort of how things begin to kind of end. And, several weeks before Mazzucchelli tries to convince John of these, or does convince him of that he has Mossad connections and is promising John money all the time. This is a manipulation, an attempted, well, it is a successful manipulation of John Ford by Mazzucchelli. John receives, during this period, before all of this happening, John receives a phone call from a Manhattan attorney representing a man named Arthur Warren Klein, who wants to speak to him regarding a UFO-related incident with his granddaughter. Ford is picked up in a limo that he cannot see out of. You can't see out of the limo, and is taken to a mansion supposedly in Southampton. There he meets with John Gallagher, the name of the attorney. He meets with Arthur Klein and Arthur Klein's son, Robert Klein. Klein shows photos of his granddaughter, who he said was abducted and examined by aliens with all her body hair being shaved. 6 circular welts around her navel. John suggests that she should be examined by a doctor, and Klein said this could be arranged, but he wanted John to be the exclusive investigator. So he's like forcing John into a corner here. You be the exclusive investigator. He then offers generous donation. He then offers John a generous donation in the form of a certified check made out to Long Island UFO Network for $10 million. John turns it down and receives a business card from Gallagher, who later phoned and wanted him to reconsider, but the executive committee of MUFON does not trust any of this. Now, this is the reason I say this is because, it may not be a UFO. The UFO paradigm is descending on John Ford independent of these alleged crashes. So whether, and this could be an entrapment as well.
Absolutely.
But nevertheless, it's the UFO paradigm, which we also see in this scenario, totally relates to corruption at the highest levels of government.
Let me tell you what happened. Hold on, I just want to get this out. This is very important. John telephoned me, and I had never heard John scared, ever in my life, except for this one time. He called me up. He told me about the limousine ride, meeting with these people. He didn't say who they were, but later on, he confided in me, okay? And he said they offered me a lot of money. He didn't specify the amount, but he said they offered me a lot of money. And I said, John, if you don't feel comfortable taking that money, okay, or trusting these people for some reason, and you're calling me up at 11 o'clock at night to tell me all the story, you're talking twice as fast as I talk, all right? I've never heard you like this. If just the prospect of this is getting you so unnerved, okay, that you sound like you're ready to have a heart attack, then you use your common sense, okay, go with your feelings and just drop it, tell him no thanks. And he goes, and I talked to him for a little while after that. He calmed down, and I don't believe he had any further communication with them. I know he didn't get any money, or anything like that. And I don't know what that was all about. But John, he was very, very upset because of the money. He didn't want to take it.
Here's the question that would strike me. I understand it seems a bit strange that the guy would offer this much money, and that must have unnerved him. Did John or anybody in MUFON try to investigate Gallagher and Klein? That would have been my instinct right away.
It's a good instinct. That's why you're a reporter.
Well, I haven't heard anything further about that, and I just wondered.
And not only that, but Peter Moon brought up something when he said that corruption in the government. Somebody was jerking Powell's chain. Mm-hmm. Somebody above him was nervous about that toxic waste dump, and I wonder who that was. That's the impression I get. There was somebody above Powell that was giving him his marching orders, and when he had an opportunity to nail Ford, whether it was by design or it was just inadvertently because of the police informant, I don't know. But
let me say something about that. Now this is not necessarily the person who was above Powell, but the day after Powell was arrested, Deputy State Parks Commissioner Edward Wankel, Wankel, resigned from office. He was a buddy of Powell, and he was directly over the Camp Hero, which is the Montauk Project area, Camp Hero, and he was publicly in favor of it becoming a golf course, while Bernadette Castro, the State Parks Commissioner, had requested that Wankel resign because she said all the toxic waste at Camp Hero should be cleaned up. Now, all of this is, this wraps up into a higher level. Now, if he was a buddy, there would have been somebody over that Bernadette Castro was at odds with, and during the political stuff that was going on, Governor Pataki, she was afraid of getting in hot water over the Powell thing with Pataki, who was a supposed ally of hers, and even more than an ally, according to some. But so, and I say Pataki was already wrapped up with Powell, and he was the governor of the state. So yes, it goes very high, and the proof of how high it goes is they still will not release John Ford. It should be, okay, this is old news. Yeah. So it's still an active case.
Yeah, good point.
Something I want to interject something. This is, I'm sorry, Marilyn. This is kind of important. Somebody who may or may not be on the phone right now. Okay, chased down a flatbed truck coming out of what used to be Camp Hero, which was allegedly full of radioactive waste.
Yes, that was me. That was me.
That was you. Okay, I didn't want to put any.
That's fine. I had witnesses with me.
It was a private conversation. I don't record anything, but
I've
if you want to say more about that, let's hear about that.
Well, yes. One time, Duncan Cameron, Preston Nichols, myself, and another lady were waiting outside Camp Hero when they were cleaning up, allegedly cleaning up toxic waste, and we followed a dump truck that didn't have a license plate and began to pursue it. And once we got out of Montauk, I had to stay over 70 miles an hour to keep up with it because it was trying to evade us. It knew we were following it. And only when I got into the town of East Hampton and saw that it had a license plate on the front, we thought if we pursued it, it would have gone to Brookhaven dumping. Where else would it have gone? So, we don't need to digress onto Montauk Project and Camp Hero, except that they were allegedly controlling time and all sorts of wild things. So, but this does, as was said, is
yes, radioactive material. This is what John was being charged with. Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I think there's some linkage here.
There is radioactive material at Camp Hero, according to people I've spoken to. But now let's change the whole tenor. What Bob Tarmac had suggested that we say, what are we going to do about this? We've laid out the case. What are we going to do about this to get John Ford out of incarceration?
That's definitely the pertinent point. I've been thinking that the last 15 minutes. Now that all this has happened, or whatever the reasons, or raison d'etre, or whatever, at this point, where it would seem that John Ford has earned, I don't know if the word is parole, probation, whatever.
Hell, they let John Hinckley out. They let him go on unsupervised visits for a couple of days at a time.
He needs.
I know. John never learned to fly. All right.
I was doing the math on that. I thought it was going to be 66. Yeah, he went in when he was 47.
This August he turned 65. He will turn 65.
Okay, 65 then. So yeah, it's just way too long. Way too long.
All right.
But I wanted to mention it hasn't been brought up. It hasn't been brought up that the A&E channel was supposed to do a documentary on John's plight and his story. And one of the members here may have more information on this.
I could elucidate on that if we have time for that.
Please go for it, Rick.
Yeah, that was the producer's name was Stuart Sweezy, and he contacted me. Now this is going back to 2007. He contacted me. and I assume contacted other people, and he also asked me to try to set up some interviews with people.
Right.
I mean, he interviewed me, and I got some.
Him.
Right. So, and here's what happened. He got fired. The thing never went on, and now you could read a lot into it. It could be people, show business things. A lot of show business things don't make it. That thing never got on. And
he's doing great. Well, Ancient Aliens, all that stuff is doing great on the History Channel. A&E is owned by Hearst Business, Hearst Corporation. All right, I worked for them for 4 years. Hearst Business Publishing. I used to write articles for 2 different magazines, and believe me, if there's a political matter in it, they don't want to touch it.
Well, here's a postscript to that. I mean, certainly I don't want to go up on the whole thing about the media being controlled by a few big companies, which it is. In 2009, I was contacted by Bill Burns was doing. Now, I'm sure you all know Bill Burns, and he's been on TV a lot.
Definitely.
He did a piece on the Southaven Park crash. He interviewed me. He never used the interview. The piece was definitely, it was kind of lukewarm, saying that, well, it seemed like something happened, but we don't know for sure. I don't know. I didn't find it satisfactory. Of course, naturally I was disappointed that he didn't use, my interview. But those are to me the 2 attempts. I thought the A&E piece, I thought Stewart was really into it. I thought I liked him. He was really, he said, and here's a good line. He said, I think John Ford's the Nelson Mandela of ufology.
Yes, and they hired an attorney. His attorney was hired they hired an attorney. A&E did. So this is how, and then they
right.
They killed it.
Right. And now, in fact, John has told me. He said that A&E has in their possession a number of things, belong to MUFON that they never returned. And I don't know. Excuse me. Then things do get lost in the shuffle, but unfortunately, this thing would make a fantastic story on TV, and it hasn't been done.
Well, and I also want to remind people that, Jerry, you were paid to come do an article on an update on the Montauk Project, and that was killed. They kill everything that is sensitive.
Yeah, I should. In fact, I should just add a little. Peter's right that this was back in now I don't know 2010, 2011. The Long Island Press. I was trying to get them to do an article on Ford, and they said, well, we don't want to do Ford. Would you do something on the Montauk Project? I said, fine. I interviewed. I mean, I had previously written on the Montauk Project for the Hamptons paper, but I remember interviewing Peter, Preston Nichols, a number of other people. They were going to do a cover. They said, we're going to put this on the cover. And then I handed in the article. They said it was too long, it's 4,000 words. Cut it down. I cut it down to 3,000 words. Then they said, the editor said, have any of these people been in the mental institutions? So, okay, we're going to do it. We're not going to run it next week. But, they kept putting. Then they said, we're not going to run this. With no real reason.
Because I'll tell you what. Because Preston Nichols was an investigator on the Long Island UFO Network. He used to go out on his team. I had a team. John had a team. We went on different investigations. We made sure that everything was secured. We gave people assurances that their names and their identities, their locations would all be held in the strictest confidence.
You think they killed that just because of Preston? Do you think they killed it just because of Preston?
Possible. They found out that Preston was involved, and Preston.
I don't think it was just because of Preston. I think it was the whole Montauk Project thing.
Jerry, I have a curious question for you, Jerry. If they said, okay, take it from 4,000 to 3,000, and then that wasn't good enough, then they brought up the idea of, are these people crazy? That seems like a non sequitur response. Well, you brought it down from 4 to 3. Now we're not going to do it. We wanted it 3, not 4. It was okay.
I don't. You know what? I don't know why they. Why? And first of all, here's the thing. I didn't approach them about it. I approached them about Ford, and they said, do the Montauk Project, we're going to run your cover story. It was literally their suggestion. It was literally their suggestion, and then they turn around and say, no, we're not going to run it.
Was it the same person?
Yeah, it was the editor. I can't remember his. I don't remember his name now. I could find it, but I just don't remember his name.
Which paper was it?
It was called. The Long Island Press.
Long Island Press. Are they still in print?
No.
Oh, you may be confusing it. For many decades, there was a paper, the Long Island Press, which went out of business in '77, and this paper.
Okay.
They took their name. They started in 2003, and the new Long Island Press is no longer being printed. It's just online now, but it was from so it's a new, and they just took the name. I'm not saying it's not necessarily like the old Long Island Press.
Okay, guys, is it okay if we take a couple questions from chat? Would you guys mind?
Go ahead.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure,
So this. Okay, this is from Neutron. It's directed towards anybody. Has MUFON offered John legal support? Does MUFON consider the charges on John not related or not? Go ahead.
MUFON can kiss my ass in Macy's window. Okay.
Talk about a hot potato. Oh my God.
How do you really feel? I mean,
thank you for asking.
Let it all out.
MUFON, if I ever get my hands down their throat, I swear to God, they're in for one hell of a time. You talk about hypocrisy and bigotry. I tried approaching them myself, and every one of those SOBs ganged up on me and tried to badmouth me for trying to get help from them with the John Ford case.
What exactly did they say to you?
Oh, I was lambasted the same way that Elaine Douglas was. Okay, I was told that I'm a troublemaker. I'm busy sending them. They actually labeled my messages to them as being spam, junk mail. They went to their head director. I don't know. It used to be Texas. I don't know where it is now. They had him contact me directly to say, hey, what's going on here? Why are you doing this to my investigators in the rest of the country? And which I said, what am I doing? I'm coming to you guys with something that you've been ignoring intentionally for 16 years. I want you to do something about it. And I don't think I'm doing anything bad by asking that. I would like to know what your position is on this. And the director of MUFON backed off when I confronted him on that. And he said,
who
okay.
Who was the director?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. That's who they had come.
You're talking about the regional MUFON, Brooklyn and Queens?
No. I'm talking about
the international director.
I'm talking about the national kingpin.
Okay. Look, we had a really good working relationship. MUFON and MUFON had a good working relationship. One guy called me out of the blue from a MUFON investigator. Called me out of the blue. Needed a Geiger counter. I told him, look, I have a Geiger counter. It's worth about $300. It needs batteries. If you come over here, you can use it, but I need it back like tomorrow afternoon. He came over here. We talked about UFOs for a while, investigations. I gave it to him. He cleaned it up, put new batteries in it, brought it back over here. I shook his hand. He left. We traded business cards, and that was with the Brooklyn Queens MUFON chapter. So I think we should start with them because they are closest to Long Island, and they're probably covering Nassau and Suffolk counties. Even though it's outside New York
The local
City.
chapters are great. Sal Giamuso, love them. Okay, the low-level people, those are the good ones because they're not involved at the higher levels with the rest of the scumbags that run it.
They have contact with the higher-level people, don't they?
I doubt so because Sal Giamuso.
Well, here's the question: Why would MUFON put this down or not want to look at it? What would be?
I've had any number of conversations with John about this, and this is what he brought up. He told me in no uncertain terms, MUFON constantly tried to take and make demands on MUFON giving up their UFO files, and John would turn around and say, look, we can't compromise the privacy and the integrity of the people who have put their faith in MUFON to keep their identity secret. And MUFON didn't give a damn. So,
there are other
surprise.
All they wanted was the cases, and they would go to all links just to get those cases, because as far as they were concerned, they were the only UFO investigators that knew what they were doing.
Qualified, yeah.
Let me put this into context for the question that was asked. And this is, if you study the whole UFO, what you call disclosure, and the certain points, and Bill Burns' character has been impugned very accurately by Douglas Dietrich, who was on Revolution Radio, and how all of these strings tie back to Michael Aquino, who was the satanic chaplain for the U.S. Army, and how so much in the alternate disclosure stuff, you see all of his characters are, he's like the puppeteer for so much of this. This is a separate subject, but MUFON has never been a credible, as Rick was alluding to, a credible edifice for investigating anything. It's more like collecting dossiers on people, and it's like its own intelligence network, but as another agenda. So, I mean, the person should get more informed, which is a constant problem.
But they are on TV, aren't they? And
yes.
They reach a lot of people, don't they?
That's the whole point. You're very good point.
The only thing I'm saying is, if you're going to want to get the word out there about John, maybe have to, smooch a little MUFON butt. You know what I mean?
They won't touch it. As soon as you bring it up with them, they target you for verbal assassination. They target you for internet assassination. They will come after you, guns blazing, and make you look like a complete imbecile for even asking.
I just had a major attack a couple days ago from a MUFON investigator. I was accused of being in bed with a lowlife, and it was awful. I'd like to say the guy's name, but he has a radio internet show.
But Marilyn was at one time the state director for MUFON for Oklahoma.
Yeah, so. and I left MUFON because I saw the really good cases going out the back door. And
I was I investigated cases for MUFON. I was directly under John Schuessler out of the Littleton headquarters. Now, I can tell you that the 7 cases that I investigated that was given to me by John Schuessler directly, I did reports and I had witness statements, photographs, and everything. And I turned all those over into, that was supposed to be going into the case management system. The Pandora Project is what it was called. And I can't tell you where those cases are today. I have no idea where they went. And they were, but mine wasn't political, and I wasn't out of character assassination. I was investigating real good flying saucer UFO reports.
Right, and that I understand. And the thing is like, I understand. You want to keep things scientific. I get it. I'm more of a crusader and a visionary. Okay, I have the dry aspects of the academic mentality tends to piss me off on a regular basis because it's often used as an excuse to look the other way. Oh, we're all about scientific research. We don't want to get involved with that. Well, how long do you think you can get away with that mentality before you're pigeonholed as well, and now you're sitting in a sanitarium?
Well, and you bring up a good point, and I tell people that this study of ufology, whatever you want to pin a label on, is not benign. People have gone missing, people have been killed, and people have been incarcerated. And so it is a field of study. And to answer Richard Smith, to answer your question, that scientific is what can bring pressure on getting John Ford out. That warrant, from all indications, and I've written hundreds of search warrants and arrest warrants, it sounds to me like it's all part of the fruits of the poisonous tree. That warrant is bullshit. That's fictitious. It was railroaded through. From what I know, what little I know, okay, the tapes that were used to convince the judge that they needed an arrest warrant and a search warrant were edited. You never edited the tapes, okay? The judge wants to hear all your evidence. What you got?
You're right, exactly.
Okay, and what's that?
You've heard the original tape.
It's incredible, Joe.
Did you hear the differences?
Absolutely. Look, absolutely. And so that tape was edited. I'm telling you that it's a bullshit case against John Ford, at least from the criminal standpoint. And they're probably, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know about New York law. I can only speak to Colorado law. But as long as John is incarcerated, the statute of limitations doesn't start because he's still being victimized. And if he was put in there under false pretense, evidence that was either edited or planted or otherwise to show that it was a false assumption and that warrant is no good. Mm-hmm. I find it fascinating that there's a 2-day difference on the date of the warrant, and they have somebody come and go, "Oh, that was just a typo." That would never fly in the.
That's what I found fascinating. That the lawyer just brushed that off.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
I said, I mean, if that were my
what
case,
happens if they got one number off on the address, which happens, and there's been a number of times where SWAT teams under arrest warrant hit the wrong damn house because they had it wrong on the damn warrant.
Yeah, you hear that all the time.
And kill people, Ken. And kill people.
Hey, listen. Hey, look at this man's been incarcerated. Look at John Ford. Now, I don't know John Ford. I don't know anything about this guy, really, other than this case. Okay, he could be a real jerk as far as I know. But based upon what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing and what I'm listening to, this guy was incarcerated
illegally.
Yeah, and so the statute of limitations.
Phony information.
Yep. Somebody. Hey, there's a crime here, and I mean a major goddamn crime.
Yeah.
And it should be a lesson to all of us. Okay, and that goes for all of our listeners.
An attorney who will take this and bring it into court with the full.
You don't get the head district attorney going on television in front of everybody, in front of the whole world, and show John's entire gun collection, which all of it was legal. Every single piece of thing.
Hell, you're describing
he had on that table.
You're describing
legal. He had full carry permit. He was a court officer.
And I'm fascinated with firearms. I've been around firearms all my life. So when you talk about John Ford, I'm thinking to myself, that could be Ken Storch. Yes, George.
Yeah. I mean, the guy had a couple of mine detectors, metal detectors.
Yeah.
All right. He had a couple of empty mortar casings. He used to use them as an ashtray. I've seen him dump when he used to smoke a pipe. I've seen him dump his pipe into this thing because it looks like a garbage pail.
Right.
And it was full of there was two of them in his living room. He used to use them for ashtrays. I'm not joking.
You know,
novelties, and gee, that's a real crime, isn't it?
And Joe Mazzucchelli is telling the guy on the phone, that's what that thing about the mortar casing, that somebody was going to repack them, and then he was going to sell them to him. Repacked.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that's what he was talking about in the phone call.
Oh, man. Hey, now the only I don't know how much time we got left, but let me real quick address the uranium. The only, and I don't know if this is for fact, the only way that they could hang,
radium.
What's that?
Radium.
Radium. Yeah. The only way that they could hang a charge on John for that, if John thought that it was the real deal, that it was, Hiroshima type stuff. Okay, if he thought that, because I can tell you, I worked Vice Narcotics, and I'd be selling somebody some, what they thought was cocaine, and it was baking powder. As long as they thought it was cocaine, they're committing a crime.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, right. Even though it turns out that it's not cocaine, as long as you think it is, and that's your intent, and that's the key. Yeah. So if John Ford thought that it was, like I said, Hiroshima type grade, whatever it is that, you open it up and you instantly vaporize. If he knew that it was just something that he was going to use to get his Geiger counter calibrated, then everything in that arrest warrant, everything in that search warrant is bogus.
That's right, and that's all he was going to use it for.
You know,
what's that?
Yeah, he
Go ahead.
never had any access to anything like that. Yep. And the only reason he got it was because they didn't have the test strips on the side of the Geiger counters. He got it at the swap meet. He was at my house. I can testify to this. Okay, and there's other people that were here at the time that could also testify to that.
And you were never called.
Okay? The lawyer never even asked me about that. He had an investigator.
For Christ's sakes. Wow.
Never even asked me about it.
Wow.
Marilyn, go ahead.
Which is part of the railroading.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He was railroaded in.
Everybody, Marilyn, go ahead.
Go ahead, Marilyn.
Oh, I was just going to say that John did not think that radium that he was getting was so strong that it was going to kill somebody. Number one, he would not have picked it up. He would not have had it in his car, and Joseph explained to him about what he needed to get and to test his Geiger counters. So John, in my opinion, never once thought that he was getting something that was the real deal that he could really use to kill somebody with.
Well, the thing is, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the research I did, I have no use for Geiger counters or radium myself, actually, but across the board, all UFO researchers, from what I understood, all UFO researchers, including MUFON, use radium to test their Geiger counters. It's common.
Yeah, we do.
We do.
Okay, so what exactly is the problem?
I told him to grind a piece that was less than the size of a quarter, grind some onto a piece of duct tape, and put it on the side of a Geiger counter. That's reasonable, is it not?
Yeah.
That's reasonable, yeah. And, here's the other thing, too. Talking about issues with character here. First of all, line up all the things that John was accused of, all right? Put that aside.
Right.
Now, the night of the arrest, let's look at how the other side of the equation was acting, okay? Suffolk County Police, thugs, degenerates, scum of the earth, okay? And here's the reason why. They walk into his home, they put him on his knees, point a gun at his head. The one officer says, "Shut up or I'm going to blow a hole right through your head," okay? They want the files. Obviously, that came down from John Powell because they were desperate to get their hands on his MUFON files.
Which were not on the search warrant.
Right. And, putting all the guns and radium and stuff aside, John had a great love for animals. He had his dogs. Now, look at the way that evolved. What did the police do to his dogs? They took him out back and they beat the ever-loving shit out of the dogs.
And you can hear it on the tape.
Yeah.
The dogs barking
my
very
God.
rhythmic, as fast as they could bark. They were barking because they were getting whipped.
They kept beating the dog to try and get a false confession out of John while they have him on his knees with a gun to his head.
Exactly.
Oh,
and they dared him. They actually dared him. They said, "Go ahead. Go try to do something about your dogs. Watch what I do to you."
That's Gestapo shit.
Mm-hmm. This is Suffolk County Police.
Welcome to America.
And not one of them...
Well, I was a cop for 31 years. I never did
that.
Not one of them...
Welcome to Suffolk County.
Yeah.
That could be.
Welcome to Suffolk County.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not naive. I know there are times police need to do that. I've seen the scum of the earth here in Albuquerque, and I see what the police are up against here. I get it.
Yeah, when it comes to drugs and
oh my God,
criminals that have illegal guns that rob liquor stores. And
but John Ford's not any of that. He's an officer.
Never was, never would be.
He was an officer of the court. The cops had to freaking know that. They had to know who they were going in there for, his background. Right. He's an officer of Suffolk's County court system, for Christ's sakes.
With good character.
So, that's the point I'm making here. Who exactly is the bad guy here in this scenario? The people you're supposed to trust, look at the way they acted. The person who's accused, look at the way he's acted for the last 18 years.
Yeah. If you've talked with John Ford at all, which I have talked to him probably a dozen times now, since I found his case in Elaine Douglas's files. And this man is a very soft-spoken man, and he does not seem to harbor any anger or ill will to those who have done him wrong. It just amazes me.
Litigious. He is litigious. He would sue somebody.
Yeah.
Okay. He would go after somebody in a court.
Right.
Okay. He would never hurt someone. I've never seen him hurt anyone.
No.
And you got to figure.
Nature.
Right, and you got to figure. Here's a guy who worked in the court system as a court officer, very litigious. Obviously, this is the identity of someone who has faith in the system, and look at what the system has done to him.
Well, that's because it was manipulated, Richard.
Yeah.
Okay,
The system, there was forces at work there that he had no idea what he was up against.
Ken, you guys, we have less than a minute. I'd like to thank Bob Tarmac, Peter Moon, Joseph Zapardo, Ken Storich, myself, Dick and Marilyn Carlson, Jerry Samizi, and Richard Smith for being on the show. We will have our upcoming show on August 9th, 9 p.m. Eastern to 11 p.m. Eastern. So I thank you guys all for coming on. Thank you, everybody.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Yes. And
do I have time to give John's address if anyone wants to write?
Yes, throw that out there. We have time. Go ahead.
Okay, it's Mid Hudson Forensic Psychiatric Center, WD 45/46, number 10022, 2834 Route 17M, New Hampton, 2 words, New York, 10958-158.
And you know what, Joe, just to interject real quick there, just so that, people, what Joe just said, you can go to ufoteacher.com/John Ford. That info is on there, too, to contact him.
Perfect.
I also have an easy
Yes,
P.O. box.
absolutely. I would.
He has a P.O. box.
I would encourage people.
It is an easy address. P.O. box
I would
158.
Okay.
New Hampton, New York 10958.
Peter, you want to give that out one more time?
Sorry.
Yes, John Ford, P.O. Box 158. John Ford, P.O. Box 158, New Hampton, New York 10958.
There we go. I'd like to thank you.
And we need to emphasize people to go to the John Ford Initiative. Rick, do you want to give your URL and information on that, please?
There's 2 easy ways they can get it. They can just go to my website, ufoteacher.com. The link that says John Ford is right at the top of the site. The direct link, ufoteacher.com/John Ford. Okay.
Perfect.
Excellent site, by the way.
Yes.
And
thank you.
Great effort by Rick.
Thank you, everybody, for all your insight.
Thank you all.
Yep. Thank you all. We'll see you in a month.
Thanks very much.
Have a great night.
next month.
Night.